wait. All right, so we did a project using Docker, and we implemented in my voice. Okay. Louder. Okay. So we did a project using Docker, and eventually we used Docker to create a WordPress site, and we implemented memes in the project as well, which was crucial to its development. So starting off, what exactly is Docker? Well, Docker is a tool that makes it simpler to make, destroy, and execute applications using something called containers. Containers allow developers to wrap up an application with all the parts needed and deploy it as one package. Similar to a VM. It's similar to a VM, however, instead of running on its own system, it borrows from the host system's kernel in order to operate. And it is also open source. Here we go.
How Docker works. The Docker engine has three main components. It has a server, which is like a daemon. Well, if you know what a daemon is, it's a long-running program. It has an application programming interface, an API that talks to the daemon, a command line interface, the CLI, which is just a Docker command in the bash script. When Docker is used, you're using a variety of objects to be able to create your containers. You have like images, which are read-only templates that are like instructions for using your containers, and then you have containers themselves, which are runnable instances of that image, which images are like snapshots of like an OS, one application, and you can create, stop, move, or delete containers using the Docker API or CLI. Why is it useful? Because containers used as a replacement for virtual machines for a variety of reasons. Containers are lightweight compared to VMs, as they share resources of the OS, like the kernel, and they are created on using like libraries and code. So it reduces the amount of code that you need to reproduce, making them much more lightweight than VMs. This results in much shorter startup time compared to VMs, and less memory space being used. It also allows for a greater number of applications to be ran on a server, as being more lightweight requires less servers than like VMs.
So what we did exactly is we installed Docker and other dependencies on a virtual machine running Ubuntu server, which is purely command line. There's no GUI or anything. And we first tested spinning up a container directly from the command line. So we didn't implement any other files or anything. It was just one command, really long command on the command line. Then we created something called a Dockerfile, which allowed us to build a container and then spin it up. And then finally we got to using Docker compose command, and it uses a docker compose.yml file to do all of the steps in creating a container in one simple command. And we made some dank memes. All right, so to learn how we can create Docker containers, we first started with the command line. And the command we used would be something along the lines of docker run, and then you'd input a name for your container. And then you'd define which port it was going to be running on. And then we ran it in detach mode, which allowed it to run separately. And we used Nginx to just test and make sure the container would spin up. And there are easier ways to do this. So using a Dockerfile, we can build a container from a set of commands much simpler than we could just from the command line. Using the code below, contained in, not below, it's actually to the side, I apologize. In the Dockerfile, we could use the command docker build -t and then create a command or a name for the container. And then we would reference some directory where an HTML file would be located for the, I'm sorry, not, where the Docker file is located. And then we do docker run as a command in the command line, the name of the container, and we can run the container. Then finally, we use Docker Compose, which is wrapping up everything into one little package. We use a Docker Compose.yml file, and this creates, builds, and deploys the Docker container all in one step. We create this file in some directory on the VM, and then we run the command Docker Compose up -d to once again run it detached, and your container is good to go. It should be up. You can connect to it from a browser. So you want to go? Yeah, sure. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Take, okay. You can just talk at me. Talk at me. Pull it off?
Pull
okay.
It off? Okay.
Come on.
There you go. And for the final step, we create a WordPress Docker file, which also use all the Docker Compose steps. And Yeah, so we were able to create a WordPress site and able to like edit the site from like the WordPress admin page. So we have a sample right here. So
Seems good to go.
I'm just gonna take it out.
What'd you do? Come on. Okay, there we go. The infamous spinning beach ball of
Yeah.
doom.
I have a lot of tabs on this side. Well, where is it?
Give it a second. There you go.
Well, since it's not running right now, if you look in the bag, this is the WordPress compose Docker.compose file. Oh, wait, I think it's not. Okay, well, it's not running again, but we were able to direct the WordPress site to a port 8080. Is it gonna work? Yes, so that's our site. This is not what we had before, but we had some technical problems, so we had to make this right like a few seconds ago, and this is our final project. Yeah.
Just basically running the Docker or getting the WordPress site to come up using our Docker Compose file was our final goal, and we achieved that. Would have been nice if we could customize it a bit, but we did. But you know, technical difficulties. Okay, so we gotta switch it back. We got one more very important slide. I apologize. Okay. That beach ball. Is it in? There we go. Okay, D end. And made a quick Photoshop edit this morning. Bless the rains down in Africa. And very faintly in the background, you can see Toto singing Bless the Rains. Yes. Thank you very much, Mentor Rain. Any questions? I doubt there's any. No,
Can I
okay.
answer your questions anymore?
Yes, Nick.
Do you think that Docker would be helpful, like if you had to like spin it up again? Do you think that this is a valuable tool opposed to like rewriting the next thing?
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty valuable. If it didn't, you know, if we didn't encounter all the technical difficulties, we did, and if it worked like it's supposed to, and it's probably because we're, you know, we're pretty. You can say that about pretty much anything. I feel like yeah, it would be pretty useful because you can just, in one command, you can put something up and take it down, and you know, I'd say it's pretty effective for that. Yes, Jay.
What are the security benefits of doing VMs versus Docker?
Anybody got a good answer to that? 'Cause otherwise, I'm gonna have to bullshit it.
That's all right. No, just say it.
The security benefits of VMs over Docker is that VMs are much more isolated compared to Docker, as they don't use the host kernel. So it's much more secure, it's isolated away from your actual OS.
Very good. Thank you, Philip.
What's the advantage of using Docker with VMs? Yeah, talked about it a lot.
There was a slide, but it said because they're much more lightweight. They're easier to run up, faster to run up, and you can have much more on a server.
Any other questions? Are we good?
Did
Yes.
you get into like testing the load balancing capability?
No, we did not. No, just Docker Compose as far as we got. All right, I think that's all.